MSNBC.
Breaking news tonight, the Army will charge Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl with desertion. Sergeant Bergdahl disappeared from his base in Afghanistan in 2009 and was held captive by a Taliban affiliate for 5 years. The Obama administration released 5 Taliban prisoners from Guantanamo Bay in exchange for Bergdahl's release last May. Bergdahl's disappearance has been the subject of a lengthy military investigation, and he will face serious charges of desertion, which carries a maximum penalty of 5 years confinement, and misbehavior before the enemy charge, which carries possible confinement for life. The question now, where does this case go from here? Joining me now are former Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy, the first Iraq war vet elected to Congress, and Stephen Karns, an attorney who specializes in defending U.S. military personnel in the military legal system. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Reverend.
Congressman Murphy, let's talk about these charges. Is this how you expected this case to play out?
It is, Reverend, because we need to hold Sergeant Bergdahl accountable. I mean, this is a person who deserted his fellow men and women in that unit when he was in Afghanistan and put members of the military in harm's way because he deserted them, and then obviously the second charge of misbehavior. But this is the first step of 3 phases here. The first step was this investigation. It's now going to an Article 32 hearing, Reverend, which is a preliminary hearing or grand jury. And then the third part of it will be the actual courts martial. And that's where they'll have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed these crimes that he's being charged with.
Stephen, give me your reaction to these charges.
Well, it's not surprising. I think the Army's hands were tied. I think that they would just assume get rid of this case. I don't think that they need this case to send a message. They prosecute soldiers every day for desertion, but I think that their hands are tied because they do prosecute soldiers every day for desertion. And what do they do if they don't prosecute Sergeant Bergdahl? The thing is with this case is the amount of time that the Army is going to have to put in this case is probably equivalent to a murder case. But I have a feeling that the result, that is the length of the sentence, is not going to compare to the time that they put in the case and is not going to come close to a murder-type sentence.
Stephen, there's been talk about a possible plea deal. What's your take on that?
Well, based on what I've read today, is basically the command has suggested by stating that they don't want to see this process drag out. To me, that tells me that they're asking Sergeant Bergdahl to submit an offer. Let it tell us what you think is fair. We'll take a look at it. And frankly, that's what happens in 99% of desertion cases. It's easy to prove desertion. It's really just a matter of the sentence. So by submitting an offer, Sergeant Bergdahl could potentially limit his exposure. And I think that that's what he's going to want to do because he's going to be found guilty if it goes to court-martial. At this point, it's damage control. And if you're looking at life, you probably submit an offer, I'd say 2 years to start and see if they take a bite at that.
Congressman, there's been a lot of talk about 6 soldiers dying while searching for Sergeant Bergdahl. Last year, his former squad leader said, quote, "If he wouldn't have deserted us, these soldiers very well could have been in a different place at a different time rather than the place at the time of their death." Now, Congressman, the details here are murky, but could this factor into the case against Sergeant Bergdahl?
Reverend, yes and no. Yes, in a sense that when you're proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed these crimes, these 2 crimes that he's being alleged to have committed, it won't go into that factor. But in the sentencing part of the trial, of the courts martial itself, Reverend, it will, because there's what's called aggravating and mitigating factors. This is clearly his behavior had some aggregating factors and results potentially the loss of 6 other soldiers. So that's very important to consider. But I would also say one other thing that I want to disagree with Stephen real quick, Reverend. You know, this case of bringing Sergeant Bergdahl to justice sends a message that we do not outsource American justice to our enemy overseas. We bring them home and we try them here. So no matter what the cost, no matter how difficult this might be to put forth this case, and it will be, justice will be served, and it sends a very clear message to those in the military and out of military that they must abide by the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
On that point, that is exactly what the president said upon the release of Sergeant Bergdahl. Let me play this.
We also made an ironclad commitment to bring our prisoners of war home. That's who we are as Americans. It's a profound obligation within our military, and today, at least in this instance, it's a promise we've been able to keep.
That's what the president said, Stephen, last year when the announcement was made that Sergeant Bergdahl had, in fact, been released based on that deal. Your reaction to the congressman's statement, and as well as to what the president said, has that not been fulfilled, whatever the outcome?
Well, I agree, and that's why I don't think that there's any more reason. Well, I mean, there's certainly reason to send a message. I mean, that's clear. I mean, a message does need to be sent for multiple reasons. But as a practical matter, what I think that they're going to be concerned about is they're going to be focusing so much on sending a message that ultimately a judge or a panel might not end up agreeing with them. And so I think in this case, and what we're going off of as well, is we don't even know what Sergeant Bergdahl is going to say. Has anyone heard his story? I mean, maybe the government knows more about his story or mitigating circumstances that caused him to leave, possibly mental health issues, who knows? But it certainly is odd that the government would already come out and state, we want to see this case move quickly. I mean, you don't say that in a case when you're looking to get a lengthy sentence.
Patrick Murphy, bottom line, is this the right thing that has happened?
Absolutely. This is the right call. Justice will be served. It's time to get him brought to justice, and I am confident that a panel or a jury will find him guilty of these crimes that are alleged.
Congressman Patrick Murphy and Stephen Karns, thank you both for your time tonight.
Thanks, Reverend.